Hello, and welcome to the workshop on rhetorical appeals.
So first off, we're going to explain what rhetorical appeals are. So rhetorical appeals are techniques or devices that an author uses to either persuade or have their audience identify with their position. Authors tend to employ them so that their argument is well-rounded, more credible, and more believable.
So it's really important when you're using rhetorical appeals to understand the audience and the purpose. So in order to best persuade your audience, you need to understand the purpose of your writing and who your audience is. If you don't understand the purpose and who you're writing to, it can kind of get a little muddy. So identifying your purpose and your audience right from the start can help you use the most effective rhetorical devices. An example of why this is sort of important is that you might not try to be solely logical with a toddler, but you might to a fellow scholar. So you can see that understanding the audience purpose and even context of your rhetorical situation can help you employ these rhetorical appeals.
So some of the basic rhetorical appeals that we're going to cover today are on the screen. So we're going to break down a little bit about ethos, which relates to credibility, pathos, which relates to the emotions, and logos, which relates to, or appeals to, sorry, logic.
So first is ethos. Ethos is an ethical appeal, which is primarily based on the credibility of the writer. An easy way to remember this is ethos E, ethics E. So a credible writer uses peer-reviewed sources and accurately portrays the opposite position's views. In doing so, they demonstrate how they respect and are considerate of their audience when they are presenting their position. So again, this is why it's important to understand the purpose of your writing and that audience. When you employ ethos, you are giving credibility to yourself and also showing your reader that you are knowledgeable and respectful of their position.
So the second rhetorical appeal that we are going to discuss is pathos, which is an appeal to emotions or the passions. So emotional appeals often come from interviews or stories, which can help draw attention to what you're trying to say. So instead of maybe using statistics to explain a specific phenomenon, you can go and get firsthand accounts about someone. Say you're writing a paper on incarceration. It can be more effective to go and get someone's firsthand account of their experience being incarcerated to demonstrate that systemic abuse versus statistics, which are a little more detached from the situation. This will allow your reader to have more of a connection to your writing.
So the third appeal that we're going to be talking about today is logos. So logos is an appeal to logic or reason. Logical appeals are typically statistics, data, facts, studies, and observations. These should be indisputable information. This should be indisputable information. For example, if you're writing about declining rainforests, you might provide data on the percent of rainforests cut down, the exact locations, the statistics on the effects, or other information that will appeal to your reader's sense of logic. It is important here to remember that this information is specifically hitting on the logical side of the brain. You want to make sure your information is factual and data-based.
So again, one question that you might have is, how do I know which appeals to use, or how do I use it? And in that, it's important to always consider your audience. We have here a sample paragraph that deploys all three of these appeals. Feel free to pause at any time to be able to kind of get a better sense of what's going on in this writing. So New York Times publishers and MacArthur Fellowship winner Valeria Luiselli uses her writing to help draw attention to the children refugee crisis in Central America. Her work centers on her own experiences volunteering to help the refugees by translating the children's experiences so that volunteer groups could help develop a legal case. These tales help to capture the reality of the migration crisis, which according to the UN Refugee Agency has now reached approximately 470,000 displaced peoples as of 2021. In stories written on the crisis, many are unaware of the horrible conditions these people are subjected to. 8 out of 10 girls get raped along their journey. There are mass graves in Mexico being found every week, basically, with remains of people. Louiselli's new novel attempts to capture these realities, displaying the brutality of the crisis and to shed light on the children who are often ignored. As you can see here, there's a mix of ethos, which basically demonstrates how the person we're discussing is qualified to discuss this issue. Pathos is used to kind of paint a deeper picture of the statistics, right? These 470,000 people are displaced, but their conditions are horrible, that there's brutality involved. So properly deploying these three different appeals paints a larger picture and a credible picture as well of the situation.
When you're using rhetorical appeals, it's important to understand that there are also things called logical fallacies. So logical fallacies are errors in reasoning. They are easy to use, but are inherently flawed logic. Using them makes your argument less credible. Here are some of the most common fallacies to avoid when writing. So the first is slippery slope. This would basically mean if A happens, so will B, then C, then D. So to stop D, we must stop A. So you fall into a slippery slope. The next one is generalization. So rushing to a conclusion or making a claim without evidence. You have a red herring, which is avoiding the key issue to discuss a topic only loosely related to it. You have straw man, which is oversimplifying an argument and attacking the incorrect oversimplified version. You have ad hominem, an attack on the person instead of identifying a flaw in their argument. You have begging the claim, which would be putting the proof of a claim in the claim itself. You have ad populum or bandwagon, which is assuming that because everyone believes it, it must be true. And finally, you have moral equivalence, which compares minor misdeeds with major atrocities. All of these are logical fallacies. They are incorrect reasoning because they are not employing the rhetorical appeals as they should be employed.
So next we have an example paragraph that utilizes logical fallacies to make their point. So feel free to pause now and read through this paragraph. How many fallacies can you identify? I'm going to go ahead and also read it right now. So feel free to either pause and read for yourself or go ahead and listen on. So fast food companies are all run by horrible people who just want to get money and who do not care about the environment. Because filthy and gross fast food is not good for consumers and for the environment, people should stop eating fast food. If people eat fast food, they are supporting the use of palm oil. Palm oil companies ruin forests and cause deforestation, which causes the orangutans to lose their habitats. Therefore, people should stop eating fast food in order to save the orangutans and the forests. People who consume fast food support deforestation and the declining orangutan population.
So here are some of the logical fallacies that were employed in that paragraph. The whole paragraph contains fallacies. So the first is an ad hominem trying to attack someone's character, which would be fast food companies are all run by horrible people who just want to get money and who do not care about the environment. The second example is begging the claim because of the filthy and gross comment. So because filthy and gross fast food is not good for consumers and for the environment, people should stop eating fast food. So in that, you're already claiming filthy and gross. Your reader already understands what you're trying to say. The claim is already there. The third is a slippery slope, trying to connect two issues with little evidence or any logical connection. So if people eat fast food, they're supporting the use of palm oil. Palm oil companies ruin forests, cause deforestation, which causes the orangutans to lose their habitats. Therefore, people should stop eating fast food. So you can see I've fallen on a slippery slope here. And the final fallacy is a straw man that oversimplifies the issue and attacks someone's character. So people who consume fast food support deforestation and the declining orangutan population. That simply might not be true. And it's a straw man. I'm not discussing the issue. I've instead attacked someone's character. So these are just examples of some logical fallacies in play.
So as you can see, the first one employs these appeals throughout, and the second one kind of depends more on, attempts to use pathos and attempts to use ethos, but falls short because it depends on fallacies, which makes it misleading and tactless. So while the first one utilizes fact-based and logical sources, building on that credibility of the writer, the other one does not.
So, one final note before the end of this workshop: using rhetorical appeals helps your audience understand the root of your argument and your evidence. You want to make sure to use a variety of evidence and to try to use all three types of appeals whenever you can. This helps you build not only a stronger argument, but improves your credibility as a writer and improves your reader's ability to understand and agree with what you're saying. So, as you listen to speeches, read articles, and see advertisements around you, try to pinpoint their use of these three rhetorical appeals. Does it help convince you of their argument? Keep that in mind as you write. Good luck.